Chapter 7. The mood was somber by the time the 5 Vanderbeeker kids gathered back downstairs to eat their own breakfast. Hyacinth felt responsible for the failed outreach as she watched Jessie mope. After all, Jessie had wanted Hyacinth to do the first Biederman mission, and now Hyacinth needed to fix it. Directly after breakfast, Hyacinth retreated to her room with Franz. While her dog occupied himself by staring out the window at a bird, Hyacinth took out sewing supplies and sheets of red and green felt. Carefully, she cut out letters spelling the Biederman's name from the green felt, and then she threaded her needle and sewed the letters onto the rectangular red piece. The letters did not end up going across the placemat in a straight line. Instead, 4 letters in, she realized that there was a distinct upward slant. She tried to correct it with the next few letters, but when she reached the M, the name was tilting the opposite direction. By the time she finished, the name had a decidedly bumpy look about it, and something else seemed off. She thought that the I was before the E, but after she sewed the letters on, it looked a little wrong. Hyacinth's hand was aching by the time she finished. She rolled the placemat up and tied a green velvet ribbon around it. She let her eyes linger on the green ribbon, already mourning the loss of that piece from her collection. It was not easy to part with her beautiful things. "You ready to be brave, Franz?" asked Hyacinth. Franz lifted his front legs and rested them against her stomach. It was time for Hyacinth to be more than just the 4th Vanderbeeker, the shy one, the scared one. She needed to be Hyacinth the Brave, a girl on a mission to save her home. Together, Hyacinth the Brave and Franz left their apartment and marched upstairs. The brownstone stairs whimpered all the way up. "Be brave, be brave, be brave," Hyacinth whispered to herself. She looked down at Franz, and her faithful dog grinned at her and wagged his tail. Hyacinth squared her shoulders and knocked on the door. The second Hyacinth knocked, she knew something bad was going to happen. She knew before she heard the stomping from inside, the 3rd-floor apartment, and the barrage of clicks and bangs from locks being disengaged. She knew even before the door swung open. Hyacinth trembled as she stood before a monster of a man with shaggy dark hair and a beard streaked with white. His face was creased and pale and lifeless. He was wearing black, black, black. "Leave me alone!" His voice shocked Hyacinth. It sounded like he was talking around a mouthful of nails. "Move out of here and let me be." Hyacinth stood frozen for a full second. No longer was she Hyacinth the Brave. She was back to being the 4th Vanderbeeker, first-class warrior, and the shyest kid on 141st Street. She dropped the placemat at his feet and stumbled down the stairs, Franz at her heels. She reached the door to her apartment and slammed the door behind her. When she reached the safety of her top bunk, she burst into tears. Big, hiccuping, drowning tears. Oliver's stomach was rumbling when he heard the door down the hall from his bedroom slam, and then his little sister's bedroom door open and shut. For a millisecond, he wondered if everything was okay. When he didn't hear anything else, he put his book aside and decided to search the kitchen to see if he could find where his mom was hiding the double chocolate pecan cookies. He opened his bedroom door. Oliver heard sobbing. It sounded like Hyacinth. He tried to ignore it. The cookies were calling him, but then the sobbing intensified. Oliver knocked on Hyacinth and Lainey's bedroom door. There was no answer. He opened the door and peeked inside. Franz sat on the carpet, whimpering. Hyacinth lay on her top bunk, her stuffed penguin held close to her chest. Oliver let himself in, and he closed the door behind him. "Can I come up?" There was no answer except suppressed sobs, so Oliver took that as a yes and climbed to the top bunk. Hyacinth was a sad sight with her blotchy face and her swollen eyes. Everything okay?" Oliver asked. No answer. He tried again. "Wanna tell me what's wrong?" Nothing. "Do I need to get my sword and take someone down?" Hyacinth sobbed out something through her tears that sounded like Miss BB Mania, which Oliver was certain could not be correct. He gingerly patted Hyacinth's back and waited for her to be more coherent. I felt, hiccup, like I needed to fix, sob. What happened this morning? Sniffle, with breakfast. Well, I spent hours making him pick up a placemat, and then I brought it upstairs to him, and sniff, I thought I was Hyacinth the Brave, but sob, he was the scariest man I've ever seen. Hyacinth's eyes brimmed with fresh tears. Oliver scowled and then rolled his shoulders and neck. I'm going to challenge him to a pirate duel. Oliver demonstrated his hand swipe technique. Take that, Biederman. Hyacinth looked at Oliver with watery eyes. After I defeat him with my superior pirate skills, we could let Franz loose and have him pee all over his door again. Would that make you feel better? Franz's tail thumped once against the carpet. I don't know why he hates us so much, Hyacinth said with a wail. Oliver deflated. Maybe it's best that we move. At least we'll get away from him. Hyacinth shook her head sadly. I love it here. I want things to go back to how they were before we had to be nice to him. Her eyes began to well up. Oliver, alarmed by the prospect of Hyacinth crying again, suggested that they go downstairs so she could show him her collection of buttons. It was an activity that never failed to cheer her up, even though it bored Oliver to no end, and they went down the stairs to the living room. Oliver remembered something. Hey, Hyacinth? Yeah? What did the Biederman look like anyway? Hyacinth paused to think. Do you remember the movie Uncle Arthur took us to last year? The one where the werewolf creeps out of the cave to attack the unicorn? Yeah. The Biederman looks like the werewolf. Wow, Oliver said, as he let out the breath he didn't know he was holding. Cool. While Oliver was trying to make Hyacinth feel better, Lainey received permission from Mama to bring Paganini, the bunny, upstairs to Miss Josie and Mr. Jeet's place. Lainey loved visiting them for many reasons. Number one, Miss Josie made the best jam cookies with plenty of strawberry jam in the middle, and she never ever used orange marmalade. Number two, Mr. Jeet always knew what she was saying. He didn't do that awful grown-up thing when he looked at her parents or siblings to translate what she had said. Number three, Miss Josie was a terrific dancer, and she was teaching Lainey how to Lindy Hop. Number four, going into their apartment was like entering an enchanted garden, and Miss Josie let Lainey pick flowers anytime she wanted. Mama and Papa had told Lainey that Mr. Jeet had a stroke 2 years ago, which meant that he sounded and looked a little different than he used to. But that never bothered Lainey. He had always been the same to her. And she loved the way he talked nice and slow so she could understand all the words. Issa and Jessie and Oliver told stories about how Mr. Jeet used to give them endless piggyback rides. He would play horsey and sleeping bear and friendly dragon. Lainey didn't remember that, but it didn't matter. Mr. Jeet was perfect in every way. Lainey lured Paganini into his carrier with a few bits of carrot, and then took her time climbing up to the second floor. A few months earlier, she had stumbled going up the stairs and almost fell on Paganini and squashed him, and Lainey did not want that to happen again. She made it upstairs without tripping, set the carrier down, and attempted many unsuccessful jumps to reach the doorbell. By her fifth jump, the door swung open, and a smiling Miss Josie appeared. Miss Josie had curlers in her hair and fuzzy slippers on her feet. She greeted Lainey with a big hug. Hello, my beautiful Lainey. Come in and have some tea and cookies with Mr. Jeet and me. Lainey brushed past a large fern and skipped over to Mr. Jeet and climbed into his lap. Mr. Jeet was immaculately dressed in a pressed button-down shirt and crisp black trousers. A large daisy was stuck into his shirt pocket, and a purple bow tie with very thin white stripes lay against his throat. Your bow is very nice, Lainey commented, followed by, Does the Biederman like cheese croissants? Cheese croissants, Mr. Jeet repeated, as he removed the daisy from his pocket and handed it to Lainey. I don't know. He looked at Miss Josie. Did you ever meet him? Pressed Lainey. She took a deep whiff of the daisy before sticking it behind her ear. Miss Josie looked uncomfortable. I knew him back before. Well, never mind that. I remember he used to listen to a lot of music. He had a record player, like us. He loved jazz music. I love jazz music, said Lainey. Miss Josie leaned down and kissed Lainey's forehead. Me too, she said. Mr. Jeet tugged on one of Lainey's braids. Is Paganini with you? He's here. Lainey slid off Mr. Jeet's lap and got the carrier. She unzipped it and the tip of Paganini's nose emerged. Miss Josie gave Mr. Jeet a sprig of cilantro, and Paganini's rabbit nose led the way over to the delicious herb, where he plucked it from Mr. Jeet's hands and ate it with both efficiency and speed. Mr. Jeet grinned, his smile lopsided. You should train him, Mr. Jeet said. Do tricks. Lainey giggled. Paganini do tricks? That's so funny, Mr. Jeet. Mr. Jeet looked at her with his serious face. Would be fun. Lainey realized that Mr. Jeet was not joking. She imagined her family looking at her in amazement when they saw Paganini do tricks. Then she added a spotlight and a stage and lots of clapping to her imagination. Lainey looked at Mr. Jeet with more interest. What kind of tricks? Mr. Jeet pulled out another sprig of cilantro and said, Paganini, come. The bunny was busy rooting around in a corner behind a ficus plant and paid Mr. Jeet no attention. Mr. Jeet gestured to Lainey, and she walked across the room and picked up Paganini and turned him around. Mr. Jeet repeated the command, waving the cilantro. Paganini hopped over right away at the smell of the cilantro and gobbled it up, his back molars crunching away happily. And so the training began. Mr. Jeet instructed Miss Josie to chop a carrot into little bits. These would serve as Paganini's training tools. Together, Mr. Jeet and Lainey worked on Come, rewarding Paganini with one small piece of carrot every time he successfully completed the command. It was decided that Lainey would visit with Paganini every day for training. Big plans were made for a bunny show after Christmas Eve dinner. Could I wear a sparkly dress? Asked Lainey. And shoes with heels that tap like Mama's shoes? Mr. Jeet nodded. Paganini can wear a bow tie. I'll lend him one. As Lainey put Paganini back into the carrier, she turned to Miss Josie and Mr. Jeet. Do you know we're moving? She asked. Miss Josie went silent, and Mr. Jeet looked away. We know, Miss Josie finally said. Your papa told us. I don't want to move. Will you still live upstairs? Sweetie, I don't think we can move with you, Miss Josie replied. We're too old to make a big move like that. I have an idea. I can help you move. I can carry things downstairs, Lainey suggested. How about we see what happens, but if we can't come with you, we'll visit you and you can visit us. Miss Josie's voice wobbled, and Mr. Jeet's head bowed lower, tears rolling down his cheeks and splashing onto his pants. Miss Josie walked Lainey and Paganini to the door and watched them descend the staircase to the first floor and safely enter their apartment. Miss Josie closed her own door, then went to her husband and kissed his head. It'll be okay. We'll be okay, she whispered to him, even as her own tears betrayed her. And that is the end of chapter 7.